Welcome to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. I'm Brooke Mangum.
And I'm Jennifer Stalin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Are you a lover or a fighter, Jen?
Oh, I'm a lover. I hate fighting.
Me too. Today's podcast is all about how to de-escalate those tight, intense situations with the people you love. Doug Noll is going to be telling us how to do that, but I'm the same way. I am so bad. I when I get in those kind of situations where I know that my spouse and I are going to, you can feel it. Mm-hmm. I like won't even engage, and it drives him crazy because he's like, I just want to kind of like get this out and go. And I'm like, can't we just move on to the part where you tell me I'm right?
Yeah, you're like, I don't want to. I'll get really upset and then just start crying, and then there are no words
That
left,
is a great way to end a fight, though. I'm over. If Doug was listening to this right now, he'd be like, I'm the reason that you probably wrote your book.
Yeah.
But I need this, is what I'm saying. I guess it does. I think that if you don't fight with someone or have those arguments or have those moments of tensions, it can breed resentment, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, you got to have disagreements. You have your own opinions. You can't agree all the time. But I also think, with great communication, it leads to not having those all out yelling, matching, where a lot of anger is thrown around the room.
Totally. And that's what today's podcast is all about. Doug is going to give us the tips and tricks to make sure that our relationships can be healthy and at their best, and to perhaps maybe never argue again. Should we take a listen?
Yes.
Doug Noll, I am really excited to chat with you today. Thank you for talking with me.
Kari, every time I get to talk about all of this stuff that we're going to talk about, you look at my smile. I'm so passionate about this. So
well, that's
thank
what you were saying before we started, that you're so excited to talk about this, which is what we love. Okay, so before we get into everything, tell us who you are and maybe a little bit about your background.
My name is Doug Noll. I'm a lawyer turned peacemaker. I grew up in Southern California, went to Dartmouth College, came back after college, went to law school. I was a trial lawyer for 22 years, and then in mid-career went back and earned my master's degree in peacemaking and conflict studies, left my law practice in 2000 with 1 week's notice, leaving $10 million on the table to become a peacemaker.
Wow.
And I discovered a very powerful technique, which we'll talk about how to calm any angry person in 90 seconds or less. And that led me in 2010 with my colleague Laurel Coffer to found Prison of Peace. And for 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, when the pandemic hit, I worked in maximum security prisons here in California and also in Connecticut, training lifers and long-termers how to stop prison violence, teaching them to become peacemakers, mediators. And we still teach that, but now in the summer of 2000, we hired a Hollywood film crew and we filmed our entire curriculum. So now we offer our curriculum on Blu-ray discs all over the world. And these days, the success of the prison program was so incredible that I finally realized this teaching should not be confined to prison walls. And so in 2017, my fourth book came out, De-Escalate: How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less. And today I teach people how to calm angry people, how to engage in nervous system leadership, and how to recognize the importance of emotions and not avoid them, not defend against them, not be afraid of them, but embrace them and learn that emotions are what drives everything that we do and think.
Wow.
And learning how to master it, and it's much easier than people think. Unfortunately, we haven't been taught properly, but the science over the last 30 years has opened up a whole new body of knowledge that really has not made it out to the mainstream, that when applied practically transforms lives. So that's what I do.
Wow. What a phenomenal career. Doug, that's amazing. Congratulations on that. And I feel like all of us can benefit from this knowledge. So I'm excited to dive into this with you. Let's start with maybe what it means to listen someone into existence.
Yeah, that phrase came to me. I was working with some middle school teachers, teaching them how to de-escalate classrooms and angry teachers. And I was teaching them a process called a listening circle. And without going into all the details about what that is, in this particular circle that we were doing, I had a young woman who was an assistant superintendent in the school district. And when we finished, she started crying. And she said, "That's the first time anybody's ever listened to me in my whole life." Mm. And I felt like somebody just listened me into existence. And this is back in, I don't know, 2009, 2010, something like that. And what I realized was that all of us have a deep need to be heard and to be seen and to be visible and to be understood and to be validated. Foundationally, we need that more than we need sex. And it's not met by anybody. And when we look at fights and arguments, all they are cries out for, please listen to me. So when we learn how to listen somebody into existence, what we're doing is we're naming their emotions. And when we do that, we're choosing humanity over ideology and connection over being right.
Ooh, that's powerful. That's really good. Okay, and Doug, how can active listening sometimes make conflict worse?
This is one of those situations where conventional wisdom is just so wrong. Active listening was developed by Carl Rogers and his colleagues back in the 1950s. And it was his protege, Gordon Thomas, took it up and in the 60s was teaching parent effectiveness training and leadership effectiveness training using I statements. The problem with that formulation and nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg, also a University of Wisconsin at Madison PhD person, the problem with all of those approaches is they're centered on me, the listener. And when I say something like what I think you're feeling is anger, in order for you, if you're really angry, to process that, you've got to go through a lot of gyrations in your brain. And when we're emotional, our prefrontal cortex is shut down and we can't process that, which is why it feels so patronizing and frustrating when somebody uses that on us when we're really upset and angry and we just want somebody to listen to us. When I say I am not listening to you, I'm talking about me. And that's why it doesn't work. Much better to go against conventional wisdom and just say you and name the feeling. Kari, you're really angry. You're frustrated. You don't feel heard. You feel abandoned and all alone right now. That's all you have to do. And what we know from brain science, from brain scanning studies, is that when we do that, the centers of the brain associated with negative emotion quiet down. They're inhibited. While at the same time, prefrontal regions in the prefrontal cortex associated with emotional self-regulation are activated. So we literally calm people down by naming what they feel.
Oh, that turned it around instantly too. When you're saying you instead of I, that instantly, that just changes the game. And what if we're trying to solve that problem too quickly? Does that shut down real connection?
It does. We've all been guilty of it, and we've all had it done to us, right? Where somebody's upset or angry or whatever, and you just say, well, if you just do this, and you're lucky you don't get a fist in your face.
Yeah, you're just trying to fix it and shut it down real quick, and that isn't going to work.
So the reason we jump to early problem solving is because we're trying to soothe our own internal anxiety over the other person's upset. And most people aren't even aware that they have this anxiety going on inside them. And so they just react. And their reactivity causes them to say, Kari, if I can just fix your problem right now, if you would just please stop being emotional, I'll feel better about myself. And that's what's going on. Now, solving problems is important, but as I teach all my graduate students and my clients, de-escalate, then problem solve. We're going to take the time to de-escalate by listening to and naming emotions. It's only going to take a couple of minutes. And then we can say, well, how should we solve this problem? Or how do we make things right between us? Or what do we need to do to prevent this from happening again?
Because when we're escalated, we're not going to solve those problems anyways.
We can't.
Right? So we
simply don't have the physiological capacity to do it because our threat status is activated, the amygdala is firing off, we got cortisol flooding our bloodstreams, prefrontal cortex is completely shut down. Nothing we can do.
Right. Problem solving ain't going to happen at that point.
Problem solving ain't going to happen. That's right.
How do we focus on emotions instead of words, and why is that so important?
It takes a little bit of practice, not a lot, but a little bit. What I teach people is ignore the words. And so what I ask my students and clients to do is when somebody gets angry with you or upset, don't become defensive, ignore what they're saying, and just label their emotions with 2 words, you feel. The reason this becomes important is that if we listen to the words, what's going to happen? We're going to get triggered. We're going to go into defense mode. Yeah. We're going to get angry. We're going to fire back. And all of a sudden it's a fight to be right.
Yeah.
When you learn to make those words white noise and just ignore them and focus on the other person's emotions, you maintain calm, confident compassion automatically. And you can sit there and be with this person who's really upset and angry, and basically signaling them, look, you can be as angry as you want to be. I don't care. You don't scare me. You don't frighten me. You don't make me anxious. You're safe being wherever you have to be, and I'm going to validate every emotion that you have. That's the signal that we're sending out, and has a calming effect on people when you do that.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, by focusing on their emotions, you don't have the bandwidth to listen to the insults that are coming your way, so you don't get triggered.
Oh, that's a very valid point. That's so good. And can you explain, Doug, the effect of labeling in simple terms?
So the technical term that neuroscientists use for this is called affect, AFFECT, affect labeling. Okay. And basically what we're doing is labeling what somebody's feeling. Now, the studies show some pretty interesting things. There is a relationship between our verbal linguistic capacity, words, and linkage through the prefrontal cortex to the emotional centers of our brain. And what happens is when we get emotional, as I said before, prefrontal cortex regions generally go offline, so we can't think clearly anymore. When we label what somebody's feeling, we're literally lending our prefrontal cortex to the upset speaker for the 90 seconds it takes for their brain to reboot. And by labeling their emotions, we're helping their brain process what they're experiencing so that they're no longer in the process. And it just has this incredible effect on people. Biologically, the emotions that cause anger, for example, only last for 90 seconds or 120 seconds in the brain. And then after that, it triggers us, and now we're into memory, and we have all these learned behaviors around anger.
Interesting.
But when we name the emotion, it shortcuts the process, and the emotions stop. And you move from raging anger to calm in literally seconds. And the thing is, every human being on the planet is hardwired for this. And the other thing that's really crazy is that you can't stop it. You can't help yourself. You can want to be raging, angry, mad at somebody. If they start labeling your emotions, you're going to calm down and you're going to stay calm.
Yeah.
Which is the goal.
Yes, that's the goal. And I love how you talked about using you instead of I want to dive into that a little bit more. Why are the you statements more effective in emotional moments? And can you maybe give us an example?
Sure. I think the easiest way to think about this is how much brain processing power it takes to hear things. If I say, Kari, you're really angry, that's a very short, direct statement. Very low cognitive load for your brain to process what I'm saying. Earlier, we were talking about I statements. The moment I start using an I statement, the cognitive load becomes much, much higher. And when somebody's really upset, they just simply do not have a cognitive capacity to process that information. So what I've learned over decades of field experience is by keeping your statements really simple and short by using a you statement, you're allowing the person's upset, dysregulated brain to process and become regulated and calm down. So and it's counterintuitive because we think that if, for example, if I name what you're feeling, what happens if I'm wrong? What happens if I get pushback? Isn't that patronizing and rude? We were taught never to interrupt. All these fears that come up over using you statements. And what happens is, yes, those fears are normal. It's all based on our childhood conditioning and cultural conditioning. But once you see the effect of calming somebody down by simply saying you feel, all of that fear goes away. And now it becomes your go-to skill because it works.
And that person is feeling heard.
They feel heard. They feel understood. They feel validated. You will hear this all the time. Finally, you listen to me. Finally, I feel heard. Thank you for listening to me. People are deeply grateful when you do this to them.
Sure. And when we're thinking about like what happens in the brain, Doug, what happens when someone does feel heard?
First of all, when they feel heard, they start to relax. So all of that threat status goes away. I mean, it's really literally inhibited. And they enter into a calm state where finally somebody's listening to me. And their prefrontal regions come back online, and now they can think again. And now we can engage in, constructive problem solving.
a lot of anger can come from just not feeling heard and be built up because of that.
That's exactly right. Think about the last fighter argument you were in. What was really going on? Why do people raise their voices in argument? Because they're not being heard.
That's true. If you're communicating regularly and not being heard, it turns
you get really frustrated. Yeah. You get really angry, and so you raise your voice in kind of automatically, thinking that if I'm louder, maybe I'll get heard. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so all arguments and fights are nothing more than cries. Please listen to me. Please hear me. Please validate me. Mm-hmm. And that's why when you can stop all fights and arguments by doing this counterintuitive skill, you feel you're really angry. You're really frustrated. You feel completely disrespected. You don't feel heard right now. You feel unappreciated and unsupported. You're really worried and concerned.
Yeah, that would make someone feel heard and calm them. Yeah, and calm them. What are the most common de-escalation mistakes, though?
Well, we've named a couple of them. One, trying to go back to that old active listening, nonviolent communication stuff that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Number two, of course, getting defensive ourselves, reacting, becoming triggered. Those are the two most common. Going into early problem solving. Another really common mistake is to emotionally invalidate somebody else. Don't be such a drama queen. Hey, a little boy out is running around, skins his knee, and somebody says, "Don't cry. Big boys don't cry. Put on your big boy panties. Rub dirt in it. It doesn't hurt." Or we go defensive. So we try to justify, explain, rationalize, appease, apologize, excuse, all of which makes the angrier person even more angry. So those are the really common responses. Or I guess one more is the shutdown. So you get angry with somebody, or somebody gets angry, or you get angry at somebody else, and they immediately withdraw. They go into emotional shutdown. They become emotionally unavailable. And that is their way of retreating into a safe place by not feeling emotion and not responding to emotion. And they just go numb. We see this a lot.
How did your legal and mediation work shape this method?
Well, I'm not sure that all my legal training and scholarship really, it helped me in the sense that I'm a good critical thinker and I'm a good writer. I think that really I'm a work in progress like everybody else. And I came to these skills out of desperation because as I said, I left the practice of law in 2000 to become a peacemaker and mediator, but I didn't have a good way to calm people down. And I was getting called into these massive conflicts, both litigated and non-litigated, family business disputes involving hundreds of millions of dollars, billion-dollar disputes, or companies with internal disputes. And I had to find a way to calm people down. And I just had an insight in a very difficult mediation in 2005. But I don't know where it came from. The thought came to me, listen to the emotions. And it was miraculous to watch what happened as soon as I did that. I was stunned. And then 2 years later, science caught up with what I observed, and the seminal brain scanning study came out of Matthew Lieberman's lab at UCLA. And now the science explained what I observed. Now I understood why it worked.
Sure.
And so I just evolved it from there.
And you mentioned you worked a lot in prison settings. How did this apply in those settings?
The story is that a woman serving a life sentence without possibility of parole in one of the largest California women's prisons back in 2009 wrote letters asking if she and the other lifers in the prison could be trained as mediators and peacemakers to stop prison violence. My colleague and friend Laurel Coffer received this letter, called me, read it to me, and said, "What do you think?" And that's how it started. 8 months later, we were standing in front of 15 women in that prison, all of them serving life or life without possibility of parole. Really angry, cynical, bitter human beings. All of them have killed somebody. And we started training them how to be peacemakers and mediators, starting with how to listen, how to name emotions, because we knew that is a core skill in peacemaking, de-escalate. You've got to de-escalate people before you can do anything else. There are about 250 skills that we teach in the program, but the foundational skill, the one that starts everything, is learning how to name emotions. And that's how it started. And quite frankly, We didn't know whether this was going to work or not. And I'll just share this story with you. This is one I love to share. 5 weeks into the program, one of our students, Sarah, told us this story. I've been in prison for 18 years. I'm serving 25 to life for a fatal DUI because I killed a family of 4 as an alcoholic drunk driver. When I came to prison, I gave up my son, my 3-year-old son, to my sister to raise. And I've written him every single week for 18 years. He's never called, never visited, never written back. Last week, I decided to write a different kind of letter, and I thought about all the feelings and emotions he must feel having an imprisoned alcoholic mother, or having an imprisoned alcoholic killer for a mother. Angry, frustrated, betrayed, abandoned, unloved. And then she looked at us with tears streaming down her cheeks. Today, for the first time in 18 years, I received a letter back from him.
Wow.
And at the bottom of the letter, he said, "Mom, I love you. I'm bringing my girlfriend. Will come visit you in 3 weeks." And her hands were shaking, and she had this crumpled letter in her hands. And I could see where the tears had made the ink run. And her thumb was over the word love, like she couldn't let it go because she couldn't believe that it was real. And Laurel and I just stood there completely stunned. And that's when we realized that we were having an enormous effect on these women.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that kept us going.
Absolutely. And, just because, she'd been sending letters for years and just changed one.
18 years. All she did was listen them into existence with that letter.
Yeah.
And the reconciliation occurred.
Doug, what surprised you most about human behavior in that environment?
It's no different than the behaviors we see outside of prison. It's just a little more violent. People are in prison for a reason. But I think what surprised me the most was that even the most violent offenders hate violence. And they choose violence because they weren't taught any other way of resolving conflict. They came out of families of violence. Babies are not born as murderers. They're bred to be murderers by their environment. And every single person that I ever met who killed somebody, they weren't psychopaths or sociopaths. I know those people exist, but they weren't ever in our classes. And these were people who made bad life choices, but partly because they grew up in really horrible, horrible environments.
Yeah.
And the same techniques and skills that they use to stop prison riots, to stop rapes, to stop murders and violence in prison, work in your kitchen, in your marriage, on your executive team, conversation you'd rather avoid. Exactly the same skills, and have the same effect
in our everyday lives.
Everyday life.
How can people start practicing this in our everyday conversations? If someone's thinking, okay, how do I even start?
Right. Really simple. You just have to remember this. You feel. So the next time somebody is angry with you or upset or persnickety with you in any way, don't defend. Don't argue back. Just say you feel angry. You don't feel heard. You feel invisible.
I think that's powerful.
That's all you have to do.
Switch it. Yeah, it's like so simple in our mind to be able to do, right? And
it's really simple.
It feels in an argument you can feel so attacked because these words are coming at you, and you said don't listen to the words and just validate and hear. And people are thinking one simple shift that we could do today. Is there anything else that someone can do?
I would say you feel, but more importantly, if you're a parent, people out there watching this, if you're a parent and you've got children, don't invalidate them. Don't tell them not to cry. Don't tell them to put on their big girl panties. Don't deny their emotions. Simply validate them. First of all, it's going to resolve the problem a lot faster. And second, it's going to teach the children how to be emotionally competent. Studies show that parents who are emotional coaches and validate their children's emotions, by 8 years old, are grade levels ahead of their peers because their emotional development grows with their cognitive development. On the other hand, if you're like most parents and you invalidate because that's what was done to you and you don't know any better, you say, don't cry, stop crying, don't do that. Children's emotional maturation slows to a stop. And that hurts them in adulthood. When you see 40-year-olds arguing and they're looking like 6-year-olds, that's because they only have the emotional maturity of a 6-year-old at that moment. So for parents, listen your children into existence. Name their feelings. Once they calm down, then you can talk about problem solving and consequences and all that stuff. But a child who's upset is not going to be able to hear anything
It's
about
true.
consequences or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true. This applies to so many relationships in our lives. A lot of us are parents out there, and that can absolutely help us. So, Doug,
I guarantee you that you take this home, Kari, it will make all the difference in the world.
yeah, we've gained so much valuable knowledge with you today. Doug, thank you so much for talking with me. And if people want to follow along and get more information, where can we follow you?
I'm all over the place. But my website is dougnoll, DOUGNOLL.com. You can email me. I'm a sole practitioner. I don't have an entourage. Doug@dougnoll.com.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Congrats, you made it to the end. If you want to continue to freshen up your day, you can watch us on Fresh Living every weekday on CBS Channel 2 in Utah at 1 o'clock. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel, KUTV Fresh Living, and follow us on social media. We will see you next week.